I started realizing, oh, the name calling, I felt different, like all the things that really started happening that year. And, for the next 2 or 3 years, it was a consistent theme, but I would just brush it off.
For millions of Americans, Chip and Joanna Gaines represent something rare in modern celebrity culture, a love story that actually looks real. From the early days of flipping houses in Waco, Texas, to building a media and lifestyle empire through Magnolia Network, the couple has long captured the hearts of fans who saw in them not just great design, but genuine devotion. They were the couple who laughed on camera, argued about paint colors, raised 5 kids, and somehow made it all look effortless. But behind that carefully cultivated warmth, the year 2022 quietly delivered a blow that no television production budget could soften. When news of Joanna's surgery began spreading across social media, something unexpected happened. Not just concern for Joanna, but a wave of emotion directed at Chip. The way he responded, the things he said, and the choices he quietly made during those weeks left fans around the world reaching for tissues. This is the story of what really happened, why it mattered so deeply, and what it revealed about a husband that fame had never fully shown before. To understand what Joanna faced in late 2022, you have to go all the way back to her high school years. Long before she became the face of shiplap and farmhouse chic, Joanna was a cheerleader in Texas, full of energy and ambition. During that time, she suffered a serious back injury from a cheerleading stunt known as a basket toss, a move where teammates launch a cheerleader high into the air before catching her. The injury to her spine was not something that healed cleanly and disappeared. Instead, it became a companion she would carry for the next 2 decades, flaring up at inconvenient moments, managed through careful living and sheer determination. In 2001, the injury demanded serious attention for the first time. Joanna underwent her first microdiscectomy, a minimally invasive surgical procedure designed to relieve pressure on spinal nerves caused by a herniated disc. In the procedure, surgeons remove a portion of the problematic disc through a small incision in the lower back, freeing the pinched nerve and reducing pain. What makes this detail especially poignant in the larger story is this. Joanna had to cancel her second date with a man named Chip Gaines to have that surgery. The man who would become her husband, her business partner, and the father of her 5 children almost missed his chance entirely because of a back injury she had been managing since she was a teenager. She recovered. The date was eventually rescheduled, and the rest, as the world knows, became the story of Magnolia. But the injury never truly left. For years, Joanna lived with the knowledge that her spine remained vulnerable. She built a career that demanded enormous physical energy, long days on construction sites, constant travel, the physical toll of filming renovation after renovation while pregnant, raising babies, and managing a business that never seemed to slow down. Anyone who watched Fixer Upper understood that Joanna's work was not glamorous in the way people imagine celebrity life to be. It was physical, demanding, and relentless. And beneath it all, that old high school injury was quietly waiting. By the time December 2022 arrived, Joanna had been dealing with worsening back pain that was no longer manageable with rest and caution alone. Doctors confirmed that another herniated disc had become serious enough to require surgery, the same type of procedure she had undergone more than 2 decades earlier. A second microdiscectomy was scheduled, and Joanna found herself in a hospital bed during what she openly described as her busiest time of year, the holiday season. On December 21, 2022, Joanna shared the news publicly in a now famous Instagram post. The image showed her lying in a hospital bed, sunglasses on, making a peace sign for the camera, a characteristically warm and self-deprecating way of telling the world that she had just gone under the knife. In a caption, she explained the full history of the injury, tracing it back to that high school cheerleading accident. She wrote about the irony of her back acting up at the most inconvenient time, but then shifted the tone entirely. Rather than dwelling on fear or frustration, she described the forced rest as something she was genuinely grateful for. She called it a gift, the chance to simply stay still, to stare at the beauty around her, and to just be present. She closed the post wishing her followers a beautiful Christmas week, a gesture so typical of Joanna's grace that it almost disguised how serious the situation actually was. Fans responded with an outpouring of love, prayers, and concern. But alongside those messages came something else, a growing curiosity about how Chip was handling the moment. Because for anyone who had followed this couple closely, there was one central truth about Chip Gaines that his entire public persona had been built upon. He was the fixer. He was the man who ran toward chaos with a sledgehammer and a grin. He was the one who turned broken things into beautiful things. And now, the person he loved most was in a hospital bed, and there was nothing in his toolkit that could help. To understand why Chip's response moved so many people, you need to understand what he represents to his audience. For years, Chip was the comedic engine of Fixer Upper, loud, unpredictable, endlessly enthusiastic, and apparently impossible to rattle. He was the guy who would spontaneously knock down a wall for fun, make Joanna cringe with a terrible joke, and somehow still charm everyone in a room. His energy was almost theatrical in its relentlessness. He made hard work look like joy. But the years leading up to Joanna's surgery had already revealed a more complicated picture beneath that cheerful surface. In a candid interview on the podcast from the Woodshed in March 2023, Chip spoke openly about the burnout that had quietly been accumulating during the peak years of their fame. He described seasons of filming during which the workload had grown so overwhelming that he and Joanna were producing content backward, still finishing one season while already falling behind on the next. He described the exhaustion that came with that kind of pressure, and he was not shy about the fact that it had taken a real toll on both of them. In a separate interview with People around the same time, Chip acknowledged plainly, "We've had our challenges. I don't want to belittle that piece of the equation." It was a rare moment of public honesty from a man whose persona had always leaned toward deflection through humor. Those words mattered because they confirmed what some fans had long suspected, that the perfect image of the Gaines family was exactly that, an image. Behind it was a real marriage, with real pressure, real exhaustion, and real moments of fear. Joanna, for her part, had also spoken honestly about the blurring of lines between work and personal life that their partnership created. In a 2023 conversation, she admitted that even their date nights would drift into discussions about business deadlines, expansion plans, and project timelines. "I think the challenge is it's hard to shut off," she said, reflecting on the difficulty of separating their roles as business partners from their roles as husband and wife. Sometimes, she admitted, there simply was no clocking out. When Joanna went into surgery, and then entered the recovery period that followed, something shifted in Chip that the public could feel even through the carefully managed distance of social media and interviews. The boisterous, always-on personality that fans associated with Fixer Upper became noticeably quieter. Public appearances became less frequent. The boundless energy that had always seemed inexhaustible appeared, at least for a time, to have been redirected entirely inward. What moved people was not any single dramatic gesture. Chip did not make a tearful speech or write a viral letter. What he did was far simpler, and perhaps because of that, far more powerful. He stepped back. He stayed close. He became, by all visible signs, exactly the kind of husband that people hope to have when the worst moments arrive, present, attentive, and willing to set aside his public identity entirely in favor of just being there. Fans who had followed the couple for years noticed the change in how Chip spoke during this period. The jokes came less frequently. The reflective pauses in interviews grew longer. When he did speak about their lives, the emphasis had shifted away from business success and toward something quieter. Gratitude, family, the things that cannot be rebuilt if they fall apart. In one particularly resonant moment during the podcast interview in March 2023, Chip spoke about fame and success in a way that felt markedly different from the man who had once seemed to thrive on the energy of constant growth. He said plainly that if all of the fame and success were to disappear tomorrow, and he could have his wife and children back on their farm in Waco, he would not have a problem with that. He said he believed he and Joanna could have their cake and eat it too. Success and a healthy marriage, but the order in which he said it was telling. The marriage came first. For fans watching a man who had spent years defined by ambition and expansion suddenly speak with such clarity about what truly mattered, the emotion was hard to contain. Comment sections filled with people writing that they had not realized how much they needed to see that kind of devotion expressed so simply. Others admitted that watching Chip quietly rearrange his priorities during Joanna's recovery reminded them of someone they loved, or of a moment in their own lives when nothing mattered except the person in the room next to them. The months that followed Joanna's surgery were not just about physical healing. They became a period of genuine recalibration for the entire Gaines family. Joanna herself reflected publicly on what the forced stillness of recovery had given her, a chance to stop moving, to breathe, and to reconnect with the quieter parts of her life that the relentless pace of building Magnolia had sometimes crowded out. She described the rest as a gift, and the people who knew her well understood just how significant that statement was, coming from someone who had spent years refusing to stop. By early 2025, the transformation in both Chip and Joanna was not just emotional, it was physical. In a January 2025 Instagram post that quickly went viral among their followers, Joanna shared a video of herself completing 50 push-ups in the gym. The post contained a caption that many fans found deeply moving in its honesty. She wrote that when her trainer had asked her to do push-ups on the first day of their new workout routine, her immediate response had been, "I can't. My back." The back that had been her limitation for 20-plus years, the back that had sent her to surgery twice, the back that had taken her off her feet during the holiday season of 2022, that back was no longer the ceiling. It had become the starting point for something new. Crucially, Joanna also revealed in that same post that she and Chip had decided to begin working out together for the first time in their marriage. Two people who had spent nearly 25 years building businesses, raising children, filming television shows, and managing an empire had somehow never found the time to simply exercise side by side. The surgery, the recovery, and the quiet rearrangement of priorities that followed had finally created space for something as ordinary and as extraordinary as that. When she appeared on the Stronger podcast hosted by trainer Don Saladino in August 2025, Joanna laughed about the fact that in almost 25 years together, they had never once worked out as a couple. "We never even talked about it," she said, still sounding slightly amazed by the realization. Chip's trainer praised both of them, writing in response to Joanna's push-up milestone, "Joe, I couldn't be any more proud. Let's keep it going. Love you both." It was a small moment, but it captured something that had become visible to everyone paying attention. This couple had come through something hard together, and they were not just surviving it. They were building something new from it. There is something in the story of Chip and Joanna Gaines that cuts deeper than celebrity news. It is the story of two people who built a public identity around the idea of fixing things, broken homes, damaged walls, spaces that had lost their beauty, and then discovered that the most important renovation they would ever undertake had nothing to do with any of that. It was the quiet work of staying present for each other when presence was the only tool available. Joanna's back injury was not a life-threatening diagnosis in the way that some headlines have breathlessly suggested. But it was real, it was painful, it required surgery, and it forced both her and Chip to reckon with the limits of the relentless pace they had built their lives around. For a woman who had been managing a decades-old spinal injury while filming television shows, raising 5 children, writing books, launching a network, and running a company, the moment when her body finally demanded a full stop was not just a medical event. It was a reckoning. And for Chip, the man who had spent years charging forward with humor and energy as his armor, it was a moment that stripped all of that away and left something more honest in its place. What fans saw when they looked at him during and after Joanna's recovery was not the entertainer. It was the husband. It was the man who had once almost missed his second date because of this same back, who had built an entire life beside this woman, and who now understood in a way that no business success could teach him that the only thing worth fixing is the life you share with the people you love. Fans did not cry because the situation was catastrophic. They cried because it was real. They cried because Chip's response, quiet, present, unglamorous, and entirely devoted, was exactly the kind of love that most people hope exists but rarely get to see confirmed. And in that confirmation, millions of strangers felt something they had not expected to feel when they clicked on a story about a television couple from Waco, Texas. They felt seen.